something in particular that you're hoping to get out of this session. So maybe we can just take a moment now. Everybody puts that in the chat, and then we can have a quick understanding of that, if that's okay. Okay, good to see. It sounds like there's a bit of a mix. There's some people with no experience, some people that used it with the pilot, some people that heard about it, and some people that have a lot of experience already. So I think that will be good to also throughout the session hear from some of the people that have used it already, maybe share a couple of experiences or best practices for people who are new. What we would like to do today, and I'll also introduce myself a bit. My name is Milou, and I'm the Pilot and Partner Account Manager at FeedbackFruits. So together with Julia, I've worked with the team at University of Washington to help with the initial pilot of the FeedbackFruits tool. So that meant that we had a test period where you could see and experience the tool, see if the teachers liked it, if the instructional designers liked it, and of course, if it improved the student experience. So after a very successful pilot, I think it's fair that we can say that we are now at the point where the tools, the peer feedback tools, are available for everyone at the university. So today is an initial session where we would like to inform you about the possibilities of our peer feedback tool. And later in the week, we have a follow-up session about our group member evaluation tool. But what's good to know, if you're not able to attend the other one, they are very similar. So if you've used one of it, I think it will also be easy to get started with the other. And we will, of course, also record the session later in the week. Sorry, it's on Wednesday, by the way. I said Thursday, but it's on Wednesday. I think before we dive in, Julia, do you want to say a few words?
Yeah, of course. Good morning, everyone. It's really nice to see some new faces. My name is Julia, and similarly to Milou, I worked together with the team on implementing the FeedbackFruits tools. And just today, I'm really excited to hear your use cases, some questions, also the examples from your teachers. And yeah, I hope you'll find it useful. Perhaps maybe we can start off with the sessions. We already know more or less that the level of the knowledge is divided, so we'll try to tailor it. But of course, if you have any questions, comments, just let us know, maybe put it in the chat, and we will address this. Could I please share my screen? I think I don't have the power to do it yet. Oh, wonderful, thank you. All right, so this is the breakdown of the session. And as Milou mentioned, this is one of the 2 sessions that we will host. And today we'll be focusing on peer feedback tool that is meant to for students to provide feedback on the deliverable. So first, we'll just run a quick introduction to FeedbackFruits, and then we will go over the main features of the tool suite, so you also know what to expect from the other tool. And then we'll have a live walkthrough in Canvas. It's best to see how it looks for the student and teacher from Canvas perspective. And at the end of the session, you will also have the opportunity to set up your own assignment with us, so you know where to find FeedbackFruits in your Canvas course. And as I mentioned, any questions are welcome. So regarding FeedbackFruits, we are a company in Amsterdam, the Netherlands, so pretty much 9 hours away from you. And we have the company because we would like to empower students learning in their every modality, whether this is on campus, hybrid, online. You can use the tools in all those different modalities. We would like students to develop lifelong skills. There's critical learning, collaboration. Today we will be talking quite a lot about those and how students can achieve it, and of course allow students to take charge of their own learning. In order to do this, we've developed a tool suite of different pedagogical tools where we always strive to put pedagogy first and technology second. We believe that the teachers are in the driver's seat, and technology is just there to kind of help you achieve those goals. And the tool suite that we developed is integrated within Canvas. And what that means is that the group's grades and deadlines are already synchronized, so you can have all this experience within your LMS, and it really helps with time saving. And as we will see also today, setting up the activities and scaling it up. And this is the tool suite. So we have tools helping with feedback assessment, collaborative learning, and synchronous learning. In our pilot, we have focused on the group evaluation and the peer review, and also these are the tools that we will be focusing on in those sessions. And specifically today, we've devoted a session for the peer review. And here I would just enclose the very brief division of what the tool does. So this is the tool that will allow peers to provide feedback on submitted work, whether this is a document, a video presentation, any kind of deliverable you can imagine. Now, before we will dive into the tool itself, we'll talk about use cases and the features. We'll first cover the features that are kind of uniform for all of the tools, so you know what to expect. So first of all, with the tools, we will show you how to copy assignments and reuse it. This is an important part, as we often see that the assignments are reoccurring. So we want to make sure that you have a means to template them and also recreate it so that you don't need to create the assignments from scratch. You will also be able to share those with colleagues. Next, you can utilize the tools in both synchronous and asynchronous learning. You can bring it to class, but you can also just allow students to fully have this experience online, really depending on your modality within the course. Within the tools, we provide different options, and one of them to really engage students in this critical thinking is including a reflection. So you will see that at the end of the assignment, you can just add a reflection module and close questions just to make sure students are really immersed in their feedback. Then we have the configurable grading. You can decide whether the assignment is a formative or summative one. If you allow grading, then you will have many options to choose from, ranging from allowing students to get points on the reviews, the feedback they got, but also for just completing parts of the assignment to reading the feedback. Next, we impose anonymity features. These features are available for you if you maybe are not sure if students will provide good quality feedback, or if they might be maybe too nice or too kind to each other and too hesitant to provide evaluations. So you can always anonymize those names in the assignment. And last but not least, you have a lot of analytics on your side. So you'll be able to track student progress, but also monitor and the progress of the assignment, and many more, which we'll see in the demo. And as I mentioned, those tools are already incorporated in Canvas, so we'll show you how to get there for those who haven't used it already. So now onto the peer review. Just very briefly, as I've mentioned, this tool enables you to facilitate peer learning, guiding students on providing reviews on each other's deliverables. On the right side, you can see this tool in practice, how students are giving feedback, they are handing in the deliverable, and then they will be able to annotate this document based on the criteria that you previously set. Those can be quantitative, but also qualitative, and students will be able to comment and also receive the feedback, as you can see on the other picture, and they will be also able to respond to their reviewer, maybe ask questions, elaborations. So you have also possibilities of engagement and interacting within the tool. And why do students use peer review and how did they do it? We see mostly teachers using it to save time because you have everything in one place, and you can organize large classes. You can put them in the groups, make them work together, but you can also just facilitate peer learning and have all the analytics in one place. It's meant to improve student feedback giving skills. There will be some features that you will be seeing that help students to provide good quality feedback, and many teachers also use this tool because they know that it helps students to provide good feedback and teach them how to do it. And of course, you get insights into the peer review process and dynamic within the groups and the class. So that is all for the peer review and me talking. I think it will be best just to see the demonstration by Milou in Canvas, so you can get a grasp of the tool. And for those who already know it, we welcome any questions, maybe some more specific for the use cases.
Yeah, thank you so much, Julia, for the introduction. Before I dive in and show you an example of what it looks like for the student and the teacher, are there any questions about the concept of the peer feedback?
So I just have a quick question. I'm not very experienced with use of the feedback tool within Canvas's feedback tool. So what's the main difference? Is FeedbackFruits just better? I mean, because I've heard a lot of complaints about actually giving feedback in Canvas, like directly on student work.
Yeah, I think maybe that is a good question for somebody who's already used it to answer, because of course I have a bit of an idea, but I'm not a Canvas user myself. So I don't know if somebody wants to say a few words from your experience, what you think the main difference or benefits are.
I can chime in. I've used both quite a bit. There are lots of problems with the built-in Canvas tool. You don't have multiple due dates. So when they submit the work, when the work has to be reviewed, and then when they've actually read their own reviews. So there's no way to actually attach dates to those things. And then the way it works with groups, if you want to actually do a peer evaluation using groups where you're evaluating other groups, that's just an absolute nightmare in the Canvas one. The way it selects people for the groups, if you don't actually do it just right, then it can really get messed up quite easily. And we have just had, with our faculty over the years, we have just tried so many workarounds to try and make the peer review tool in Canvas work consistently without getting all sorts of problems. And the FeedbackFruits tool kind of alleviates most of the problems that we have with the Canvas tool, and the fact that you have multiple due dates that you can assign. It's a far superior tool to what's actually built into Canvas.
Thank you for that, Randy. And I hope, Lisa, that it will also become a bit more clear if I show you what it looks like, then maybe for yourself you can see what the difference is.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, then what I would like to do is go ahead and share first an example activity from the student side quickly, and then from the teacher side, the same activity, so that you have a bit of an understanding of the full workflow. I don't want to go into too much detail because we also want to save some time to show you how to set up a new activity and highlight some of the main features. So just for you to have an understanding, this is what a student will see. So the first step are instructions, and these are customizable by the teacher. So they can kind of set the stage what's expected from them. And in the second step, the students can hand in their file. In this case, I've already submitted. What's good to know is that this is not limited to documents, but it can also be, for example, a video or an image. So there's different media files that are possible and supported. And I think one use case that we see a lot is where students record presentations, for example, and then they give feedback to each other. And in this case, we are reviewing a business case. So after the handing in, I can start giving feedback. And in this case, we see I have to give feedback to myself and my peers, meaning that I have to do a self-assessment based on the same criteria that I'm going to review my peers for. And this is optional when you set up the activity, whether students are doing this or not. As a student, you have an overview. You see who you need to review, and we see the next recipients are determined when I start my reviews. So what I do is open up the review overview. And what you will see here is on the left side, the criteria. So we can scroll down a bit. We can see that in this case, there's a mix of rubric criteria, skill rating, it's a bit more simple, and just open comments. So you can mix and match different type of questions. And you can also require the students to write additional comments to clarify a score that they're giving. So this is the main overview. As we can see, I already started. If I start a new review, what I can do is click start, and then of course, open up the document that I'm actually reviewing. So here we can see the submission. I can scroll through it, and then on the right side, while I'm going through it, I can give the feedback and select the appropriate scores. Of course, the students can also add comments and then link this to one of the criteria that's relevant. And what's new is a pretty cool feature that's called the Automated Feedback Coach, which was developed with the idea in mind that students might not always know what is a good feedback comment. How do I give constructive feedback? So this is an AI tool. Again, this is also optional to help the student understand how to write good feedback. So here, if I now say, I think this is good, we see that the AI coach starts generating a response. And in this case says, I'm sorry, but your feedback is not constructive. To improve, try to be more specific about what is good and provide suggestions how your peer can improve their organization, because that's the criterion that in this case I'm giving feedback about. So for example, you could mention areas of organization, and I give some more suggestions for how I can improve my comments. So I can say, I think the organization of the business case is good because it includes all the required something like this. And then we see now it says, well done, your feedback is constructive, and it's better. So then I can post my feedback comments, and we see that it's linked to this part of the document. So this is a bit how the students move through the feedback. And if I click done, I return to the feedback overview, and we can see now that I'm almost complete. So students can easily progress through the activity, and will show what's expected of them for each of the steps. Well, after finishing the feedback, the students can, of course, read the feedback that they've received from their peers. And what's good to point out that you can make this fully anonymous. So both the submitter as well as the reviewer can be anonymous. In that case, they receive a pseudonym from us, a bit of a fruity name. And if we view the feedback, we get a similar overview. In this case, my self-assessment, and then also in comparison to the feedback that I've received so far. And again, I can open up the document to see if there are any comments that I can learn from. And it's also possible for the students to reply to these comments if they want to have a clarification. And what's good to point out, for any type of comment in FeedbackFruits, you can always also record an audio or a video message, or even attach a document if that's relevant. Then returning to the overview, something that I do want to point out is that we are working on improving the interface a little bit. So with our next release, we are going to make sure that there's not as much information here on the screen with the side-to-side columns, but it will be more scrolling down, because as you can imagine, the more reviewers, the more crowded it gets. And we received some feedback from students that is just not always so clear. And also here in the rubrics, you can see that you have to sometimes click to read more, or that you cannot fully read everything. So we're going to improve this. And I think by the end of the session, we'll show some examples of what that will look like. Just good to keep in mind, nothing will change in terms of functionality. It will just be a bit easier for the students to give feedback and to read the feedback that they've received. I see some things in the chat. Are there any questions?
There was just one question about the automated feedback coach, if it's possible to turn it off in every assignment. Yes, and students can also always turn that off if you see it.
Yeah,
that's it.
For sure. Thank you for pointing that out, Julia. I guess that's it for now for the student side. Of course, if there's any grading included, the teacher can publish the grade, and then the students will see a breakdown of their grade for the FeedbackFruits activity. But right now we see it hasn't been published yet.
Excuse me, Milo. The feature where you can record a note, is that also showing your screen? Is it a video and audio option so you can show what you're talking about?
For the screencast, you mean, right?
Yeah.
I think that should be possible, right, Julia? Do you know for sure? I know that initially that wasn't the case, but I believe that we've updated it because I've heard from teachers that wanted to go and give additional feedback, that they recorded the screen and then talked through the feedback to save some time with writing out all the comments. So
that's great.
I guess this is something that would be good to try to make sure.
That's very cool because it's, you know, it's visual and audio. It's, you can talk about what you're looking at. That's great.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and I see also a good question from Anne coming in about, can students also review the peer reviews that they made? So do you mean that they give feedback on the feedback that they've received? So indicating how useful the feedback was?
Or rather, oh, sorry, my camera's in the wrong spot, but rather like sometimes like you want to go back and say, gosh, how did I leave that feedback? Was I kind? Did I do it? Whatever. So can they see that comment that they made previously?
So if it's still available later to get back to the feedback?
Exactly. And not to edit it necessarily, but just to see how it was that they provided that feedback.
Yes, for sure. So how it works is that I think like Randy pointed out, what you can do in FeedbackFruits is give a deadline for each of the steps. And we see, because this is an example, we didn't include deadlines, but what you could do technically is have a deadline for handing in and then also for giving feedback. And up until that deadline, students can always go back in and edit the feedback. After the deadline is frozen, but they can still look at the feedback that they've received. And as long as the activity remains available in Canvas, so as long as they have access to the activity there, they can always go back and open up the activity later on.
Cool. Okay. Yeah, that's just nice for students to have that ability to recognize like, oh, I could have said that differently.
Yes, for sure. No, that's so that is definitely possible. I'm thinking oh yeah, this is more for the received feedback. You can download this as well. So I can also see later on, if I want to store it on my computer, I get a PDF file with the feedback that I received. And if the feedback can be made directly on the document, the only way that you can link feedback to the document is by making a selection in the text and then adding a review comment to it. I'm not sure, Chika, if that's what you mean.
Yeah, I think so. So one of the instructors I work with, she had, because she didn't like the way Canvas's feedback tool was, or peer review tool was going, so she just kind of worked in this process where students would make changes on each other's. And now that we introduced that, hey, there is a better peer review tool out there, she was asking, she was wondering, I think it's track changes to see like if students editing another student's work, maybe.
It's not really track change, so it's not really like in Google Docs where you can actually edit each other's text or give suggestions or improve it in that way. You can only make selections to the PDF and then write your feedback here, and then the students will see it linked to the document.
Okay. All right, thank you.
And is the rubric synced with the one created in Canvas? Oh yeah, I see that Julia says it indeed needs to be set up separately. I think it's a good time to switch to the teacher side so that you have a bit of an understanding of how that works. Unless there were any other questions still about the student side of things. Not right now. All right, then this is the same activity, but then from the teacher side. And the first thing that you will notice is the overall student progress overview, meaning a place where you can see how are the students doing with this activity. Have they submitted their work? Are they giving all the feedback? Did they write a reflection if possible? So this is just for you to have a general understanding, or for the teachers to have a general understanding how the students are doing. Then if they go down, they see the similar steps as we saw from the student side. So instructions, and then here we see the submissions. It only shows the students who have submitted so far. So we can see that 6 of them. And then if we want to see the feedback that they are giving to each other, again, we have a bit of an overview per step of the progress. So we see now how many students are partially finished, how many are mostly completed, and how many are fully completed with giving feedback. And one of the newer features that we developed is the Keywords Insight feature, where you get an understanding of what the students are writing about in their open comments. So what we've heard is that some teachers do want to know what the students are writing about, but that they don't actually have the time to go through all the individual reviews. So what they can do now is just see if there's any themes that are recurring, and then they can filter on the keywords, and they see a list of all the feedback comments that use that particular word, and they can also navigate to that review if they want to. So that's just a bit as an overall overview in terms of the feedback comments. Of course, it's also interesting to see how are the students rating each other. So are they giving each other maybe really high ratings, or are there some outliers somewhere that I need to be aware of? So you can click on show ratings, and that will give you a heat map with the overall scores. So we can see kind of the average scores per criterion in case of the rubric and the skill rating. So we see the darker the blue, the more students that selected a particular score. And in this case, we can see that the development criterion needs a little bit more attention because this is the lowest average score overall. So that could be something that they customize the instructions for. And we also see that nobody selected the lowest rating, but if that would be applicable, I could also see which student received that rating to see what the issue might be there. And then as a teacher, you can, of course, also view the feedback that the students are receiving. So I can show you an example of what that looks like. All right, so in this case, and this is what I meant with that it can be a bit of an overload with a lot of information on the screen. But this is what you see, the combination of feedback received. So the self-assessment and then also the scores that the students received from others. So we see that the different dots represent different scores. So the students are not, of course, always in agreement of the quality. And what you can do, of course, is open up the document to see the inline comments, and that you can also read the feedback that the students are giving about the document. And then, as you can see, as a teacher, you can also always reply to the feedback to give additional feedback if needed. All right. And then the last step is, of course, the grading. And this can be added as an optional grade. It can also be more of a formative grade so that the students have a bit on understanding how they're doing. And what you see here is the criteria that you set up and how many points the students receive for that. So it's auto-graded based on the what you find important. So we can see here the overall grades from students. We can see that there's also a column for teachers to give an additional optional grade adjustment. So I can say, well, maybe this student deserves more points. And once this is done, I can publish the grades to Canvas. And then they immediately show up there in the grade book. I see a question from Bell. Does it have an annotation feature for reviewing images and charts? Yes, indeed. Like Julia said, you cannot just select text, but you can also make a free selection of a document or of an image. So it's really dependent on your use case. You can also, if you have a video, you can make timestamps on the video and link your comments to that so that it's really clear. So to illustrate, I don't know if here, no, I can make a free selection. So I can just select anything in the document and link my comment to this. So in case of an image, that will also be possible. All right, let's see. Are there any questions for how the flow is for the teachers? I guess what's good to point out is that you also have very detailed analytics available. So if you want to download all the data from this activity, you can get an Excel spreadsheet where you can find everything, all the student comments. I think there's a very cool video on the YouTube channel from Randy, where one of your colleagues explains how to interpret the data from the spreadsheet and how she used it for her course. So I think that will be interesting to have a look at. The outlier detection, that's a feature for the group member evaluation. So that's not in the peer review. And I don't think it's already included in the export, but we have to check. I do remember that we checked that with our product team if that's possible to include it. All right, then I think I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a second. Oh,
I had a
sorry.
question. Sorry, I didn't quite unmute soon enough. Or a couple questions. How does it work grading the peer review itself? So, can you give a grade on how well students did rating each other?
That's
And how does that work?
Mm-hmm. That's a good question. I think the easy answer is no. There's no such built-in feature to really grade the quality of the feedback within FeedbackFruits. We do have a bit of a workaround where you can, let me share my screen again. Here we go. So if I go to the edit mode of this activity, and then I'm going to scroll all the way down to here, you see you can add additional modules because there's different steps. So you can make the activity as long or as easy as you want. And one of the features that you can add is the participation grading. And what this means is, and this is developed for the case that you're describing, so that students can select one or multiple contributions, so feedback comments that they want to showcase to the teacher, and then the teacher can grade these on the quality on basis of a scale 1 to 10. So I think here the idea is that you want to actually streamline the peer feedback process and save yourself some time and not having to go through everything one by one and reading everything. So in terms of scalability, we thought, well, if we add this participation grading, teachers can still grade the quality, but they don't have to read to all the reviews individually. So that could be a bit of an in-between step. I don't know if that would work for your case, Sarah. What do you think?
I mean, I was trying to adapt an assignment that had a rubric for the peer reviewers for the quality of their feedback, and so was trying to figure out where in FeedbackFruits I could include that.
Yeah.
So it sounds like there's not a way to do that.
So we have two
right
options. The participation grading is for the teacher to rate the quality of the feedback from a student. And then students can also rate their reviewers' feedback. So if you enable this, at the end of the review, students also see that skill rating on a scale 1 to 10, how useful was the feedback that you received. So then it's more a back evaluation of the feedback from the student side.
But there's not like a rubric. That's just a 1 to 10.
No,
yeah, okay.
Exactly. Yeah, no, it's just a 1 to 10. And at this moment, that's not customizable.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. The other thing that I was wondering is if you would be able to show us how all of this shows up in the grade book.
Yeah, so I've just published the grades. And then if we go to the grade book, I think what's important here to point out is that when you set up the FeedbackFruits activity in Canvas, you have the Canvas settings where you can say, how much is this worth of the total grade, right? So you can say maybe FeedbackFruits, it's 100%, but in Canvas, it's only 10% of the final grade. So let me see, we see how different FeedbackFruits activities here. So it's just added as a column. This is the one for University of Washington that we were looking at. Oh, I see they haven't shown up yet. But you can navigate through the activity in the gradebook. Let me see if we can republish them real quick.
It might be also good to mention that in the FeedbackFruits activity, you will always see the grade as a percentage. Like, for example, here you can see 80% and so on, but you can definitely customize it in Canvas. So on your end, always 100% in percentage, but then
exactly. Yeah, that's here in the Canvas grading settings. Oh, here I see, that's why I put 0 points. So beginner mistake. Now if I say 10 points, then I can save it. And then I probably have to republish it. Is this a workflow that you are already familiar with? Is this how you would do it for other external tools as well? Maybe that's a question for everyone. Well, so publish, and then let's see, probably need a refresh. Yeah, and then we see here. And not all the students have finished the grade. So as soon as more students finish, they will also see their grades appear if we publish again. So that's good to know. It doesn't automatically publish the grades or automatically update. You do have to manually in FeedbackFruits click publish grades or schedule a publish date for this to happen automatically. But what we tend to see is that teachers do want to be in control of the grading usually. So they want to do it manually.
So that's the grade for the student submission. Is there a grade for their review? Even if it's just they did it or they didn't?
Yes.
How does accountability for that? So
that depends on how you set it up. So it depends a bit on what the teacher finds important for this activity. So when you customize the grading, you have different options what you want to give points for. So here, let me say this is everything that's possible. So you can say students get points for handing in their work, for giving the feedback, for writing the required amount of comments, and also for the quality of their the quality of their work. So this is something that's really up to the teacher where they want to put the emphasis. So whether it's 100% on the ratings for the work or whether it's more points to earn throughout the process for completing everything. Does that answer your question, Sarah?
Yeah, that's very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. All right, then I think I'm going to stop sharing my screen and give the floor back to Julia.
Thanks, Milo. All right, so it will be good to set up an assignment together, especially for those that had no previous experience with FeedbackFruits. So we thought it would be best to do it together real time. So if you have Canvas in front of you, which I would assume is the case, if you can just log into any of your courses, maybe some test course, and navigate to that course where we can test it, that would be great. I'll share my screen and feel free to just do the same on your screen. So if you're already in a course, we will go to either the assignment section or the modules, and this is where you will set up your assignment. In our case, we'll go to an assignment, and here you can either just add a new assignment in that column. I would just click add an assignment. I don't have any section already chosen. We would need to just put a name. And you can leave it blank, of course. As Milo pointed out, here will be the place to set up the points that you would like to appear in Canvas later on, also whether it's percentage or points, but we can skip it for now. The important part for you is to go to submission type and navigate to an external tool, and then click find. Now, you probably will see a lot of tools. For us, we work in different regions, so we have a different staging environments and different environments. So I'll navigate to the US, but you should be able to find FeedbackFruits already there. And once you click it, you will see two sides of a tool picker. On the left side, you will see peer review and group member evaluation tools. These are empty tools ready for you to set up from scratch. And on the right side, you will have a section where everything will be saved, which you already set up, which you created with somebody else, and your templates. We will cover that in just a bit. But just to let you know, the My Library will be a place where all your templates will be saved. Then Resent will be all the assignments that you created or you came back to, and also you will see Sent to Me. These are assignments that were shared with you and also appear to those if you share an assignment with a colleague. So for us, we will set up a just blank peer review, just so you can also see the settings, and maybe you'll have some questions on those. So I will choose peer review. And we have a couple of steps to complete before the draft will be saved. First, it's important to give it a name. And instruction. You at least need to put a dot or a word, otherwise the assignment won't be saved. So this is an important part. And in the instructions, we always suggest to put brief information about what the assignment is about. And many teachers also like to enclose a rubric or an introductory video to FeedbackFruits, just so students can already see what the assignment is about and kind of be prepared for this. And once you have those 2 steps, you can already click save and then save the draft. But for now, we can maybe continue working on this draft. So below the instructions is an important part where you will choose whether this is a group or individual assignment. In the demo that Milou showed, it was an individual one. Everybody was handing in their deliverable on their own. But when we click the change, you will be also able to change it. So in our case, students were handing in deliverable individually, and they were also reviewing it just 2 people in their class. They were paired in the groups, but you can also, of course, do it a group assignment. Students can also evaluate the paper outside of their group, or also if they're handing as a group, they can also review others as a group. So these are the options that you have. I think from our perspective, we usually see students handing in individually and also doing it individually and handing in as a group and as a group. And once you set up your collaboration option, then you will click next and you will see all those groups that you already set up in Canvas. So you can just choose those groups or sections that you would like to participate. And you can click done. So you don't choose the groups, you don't set up the groups here, but you just choose them from Canvas. And you can always see at the top where's the last sync that happened. All right, after this, we can move on to the submission per group in our case. We made it a group assignment, but as I said, it can be an individual one. You can ask students how many files they need to hand in. With that, you can also stipulate what kind of deliverable. Maybe you're very heavy on the documents or images. I think there was also a question on that, if it's possible to do it on image or chart. In this case, I would leave all the options open. With that, you can also enclose the anonymity, on both sides, the submitter and the reviewer later on. So we can turn that on, of course. And if you're working with the deadlines, you can also put that. Once you put the deadline here, students will be able to see it in their Canvas calendar. So they will be notified about it in the calendar. Then when we move on, I'll just check if there are any questions if I'm not going too quickly. If there are any questions, please let me know. In the given reviews part, this is an important part where you will set up your criteria. So you can see the feedback criteria. Currently, we haven't chosen anything yet. So we'll click configure. And for those who hasn't set up the assignment yet, you will just see it blank. You would need to create it from scratch. But for those who already work with the tools, it's likely that you will already see some criteria below that is under the copy from recent. And this is a good tool for you to use if you are reusing the rubric. Maybe you would like to work on it further or expand on it. It can save you time. You can just pull it from your copies and work on this. So maybe in this case, I'm just going to choose one so I don't need to set it up from scratch. And you can already see the 3 different parts of criteria that we can use. The first one is the rubric. This is the one that is the most extensive one. Oh, you can see it here, where you put your criteria on the left and you choose how many levels you have. You can assign points and, of course, just work on the language. And it can be as lengthy as you wish. I think we usually kind of recommend to keep it relatively short so that students are not overwhelmed with the amount of criteria that they need to evaluate the submissions on. And then if we go back, and then another criteria is the scale rating, where students would just choose points from minimum to maximum. So this is shorter to set up. And you can, of course, choose the scale, how short, how long that is. And once again, decide on your language here. We can also use that. And the third option is just a qualitative comment, which is comment criteria. And this is not gradable, no points are attached to it, but we always suggest to include it as an overall feedback or an endpoint of the evaluation, just asking general questions about the paper or any other submission. So once you set up the criteria, we can move on to other options, such as how many papers or groups are to be reviewed. Again, we recommend to keep it short. If students work within groups, maybe it's good to keep all of them so that everybody gets a paper to review. Here you can enclose the self-assessment. And moving on, you have additional deadline here for students to complete the reviews. With the allocation method, just to cover it quickly, you always see the default as 1 by 1. And what it means is that once one paper will be reviewed, then the student can see another submission to evaluate, but you can also just enclose all of the submissions to be reviewed at once. Or you can also do it manually. Maybe you have a specific use case for that, or you can also allow students to choose which paper, which deliverable they would like to review. But for that, it needs to be an individual assignment. And additionally, we have the anonymity here, as well as guiding students options, which I think will be just good for you to cover for those who enjoyed looking at the automated feedback coach. The automated feedback coach can be enabled here under the guiding students. And if you enable that, then students will be able just to see it whilst writing their feedback. And you can also enable a review checklist. Once students have completed everything, they can just make sure that everything has been finished off in their assignment. So you can adjust the language, add your own checklist here. And for those who really want to make sure that students are providing good quality feedback, that they remember just all those fundamentals for providing evaluations, you can also add feedback tips for reviewing. We've already enclosed quite a lot of them, but you can add your own and create your library of those. And then if we move to almost the last step, here's the received reviews. And again, you can set up a deadline for students just to have an incentive to read all of their reviews. And again, they can rate their reviewers' feedback on a scale from 1 to 10, another incentive for them to provide good quality feedback. And the last part is the grading. Milo already covered this, so I hope there are no questions on this. If so, please let me know. I'll also have a look at the chat if there is anything. Milo, are there any questions that hasn't been answered?
About whether you could reuse the rubrics and the criteria. So I shared that that is possible, that it's all linked to your account. So you can use it across courses. If you are co-teaching, then everybody who's in the same course as you will also be able to use or reuse the criteria that you've set up in that course. So there's different possibilities for sharing. And you can also share the whole activity setup with someone else. And I think that maybe later or in another session, we can go into more detail about the library. Randy already put something in the chat where you can at some point even set up templates for a whole department. Maybe if people want to use the same type of criteria, and if you want to lower that barrier for teachers to set up activities themselves, or for you to have to manually set up all the activities in the courses. So there's different ways to go about this and to scale this.
Yeah, exactly. I'm also trying to be mindful of time. So just to cover the last part, in order to save your assignment, making sure that the draft is safe, we need to click save at the end. And after this is not finished yet, we would need to do 2 more clicks, click select on FeedbackFruits, and then you can save it or save and publish. So in our case, we almost did all of the drafting, but you can also just keep it very short and go back to this draft, making sure that this is not lost. And one thing I also wanted to show is how to template an assignment. So in our case, we have a good assignment. It can be used in the course. If you navigate those 3 dots, you will be able to create a template out of it. You can just give it a name so that you know this is your own template, and it will be with you in every course. So I can just send it as a template. And once you create the activity, do the steps that we did together, you will be able to see that template. Also, in the more options, once you send a copy, you'll be able to share this activity with colleagues. And you can also add a message, which they'll get into their inbox. Once they click on the link, they will be able to get the assignment and work together with you or just use it.
Julia, do you want to share the chat? Oh, sorry, the help desk.
Oh, of course. And for questions, if there are any questions from students, from you, from the teachers, there is this blue button right here in the left corner in every activity with you. And this is our support chat. So please, if there's anything that you would like to share, questions, issues, sometimes maybe some technicalities will come up, just reach out to our support chat. Our colleagues are real humans. They are not AI, not yet. And they are available Monday to Friday, also working in a US time zone, which might be helpful for you. That's really good to hear. Matt shared that the chat was really useful for him. That's good to hear.
Yeah, maybe in the final minutes, we can hear from somebody that used it throughout the pilot, or maybe hear what are some of the things that teachers are saying, or what are the students saying about their experience, if there's somebody that's willing to share, of course.
Well, I just wanted to say that our pilot completed in June, and the final results of the pilot were published, I think, today on IT Connect. And there's a support page in IT Connect if you'd like to go back and find any resources there. And of course, Randy and I will keep adding them to the Community of Practice page as well.
Thank you all so much. Looking forward to potentially using it and maybe convincing some faculty to use it.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, will be good. It's available for everyone, so you can already start and play around a little bit, try to set up an activity, or maybe with one of the use cases from your faculty members in mind to see how that goes. And then if you have any questions, like Julia pointed out, you can always reach out to the chat or directly to me and Julia. We're also happy to, of course, support you.
I also want to plug the community that we've put together in Microsoft Teams. So if you're not a member of that, let me know. We'll get you added as a member of the community. And you can post questions out in the community, and hopefully we'll get lots of people helping answer questions based on their particular use cases. That's where we'll post videos that are unlisted on YouTube. I put a bunch of videos in Zoom last time, and then of course with our Zoom 90-day policy, which is now 120 days, we ended up losing those things, and it's like, oh, whoops. So I just went ahead and put them over into YouTube, but I put them as unlisted because some of these are just more UW community related rather than public. So Lisa, we'll go ahead and we'll get you added to the community. So that's my plug for the community.
Is it an idea that we share the slides and everything also on the Community of Practice page to keep it centralized and not having to go over back and forth by email?
We can definitely set up slides and stuff. We can just create a channel for slides from presentations and things like that.
And the recording, of course, we will share it. So, yeah.
Great.
All right, then just want to say thank you all very much for the time this morning. What's good to know is that we have another session focused on the group member evaluation tool. So that's the tool used for students giving feedback, usually on collaboration skills. So how does that group process go? How can we make sure that there's less problems with the group dynamics and teachers having more insights? So that's on Wednesday at noon. So we'll hope to see you there again.
Thanks so much, Milou and Julia. And thanks everybody for coming. That was great.
All right. Thank you so much. And Randy, have a good night.